Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Axie Developer Chat. This is the third one of these, and we're very excited to talk to everybody about Ron. The release just went out 24 hours ago, so I'm sure you have a lot of questions, a lot of curiosities, and we're going to tackle some of those today, as well as, I think, lead into a broader conversation about the Axie ecosystem, certainly talk about where we're going long-term, but also talk about where we're going short-term, and maybe some economy balances as well. So, Jeff, Alex, how are we? Alex, you first. Nice to see you on the developer chat. How are you, my friend?
Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be here. I'm very excited about the Rome release. Obviously, it's been a thing that's taken up a lot of my time lately. So happy to see that everything went as planned there. Obviously, a lot of stuff happening on the back that is not so clear for the entire community. So yeah, looking forward to touch a little bit on that, and also what the plans are for Rome Network and Sky Mavis as a whole, in addition to kind of taking a deep dive into Axie Infinity, of course, which is what we're here for.
Absolutely. Axie Infinity, it's what we come for. Jeff, how are we today?
Yeah, doing well. Happy to be here. It's been, definitely a busy week. So yeah, just excited to touch base with the community. These are, these are really precious moments where we get to kind of talk directly with our, with our awesome citizens of this digital nation. So yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we certainly welcome everybody who's watching live on Twitch right now, and for those that are also going to catch this later on YouTube. I wanted to start at a really high level before we dive into the deep stuff and just remind people what Ronin is, why it's important, and maybe that'll lead into a nice discussion about the Ron token itself, because it is a little complicated, right? And we do have a lot of new users, so I think it's important that people understand this stuff. Of course, Ronin is the side chain that allows Axie Infinity to happen. It's where all of our gameplay takes place right now, and it's this platform that's going to allow other games into our ecosystem in the future and also allow us to scale, right? It was very clear that Axie needed some sort of a scaling solution once gas fees on Ethereum got too high, and that's how Ronin was born, right? And that was the beginning of this journey, right, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think maybe I can shed some light on, how we got here. Of course, especially on the Ronin sidechain stuff. I mean, Axie has been a project that's been in development since very early 2018. Over time, we've gone through many different iterations. I mean, we had a parts of our infrastructure on Ethereum, and then we used Loom Network, which, for those who have been in for a long time, remember that it wasn't ideal. And then we needed to take a step back and assess opportunities. What it turned out is that, when we were mid-development, nobody really understood what the space was about. Like, it was very early for blockchain games. And frankly, I don't think we understood all of the implications either. But what we did understand is that the way to mainstream adoption means that we need to have a scalable blockchain that can handle many transactions, and that allows users to own their digital assets or Axies. So that's kind of how we ended up moving forward with the Ronin sidechain and building it ourselves, because we know the problems that we needed to solve, and at the time nobody else really did. Now, of course, the space is evolving. We see many different type of games coming in, and I think that's amazing. But I do also recommend caution. I mean, building these systems, as I'm sure we can all recognize, especially over the past couple of months, is certainly not an easy task. So for all of you guys who are here, definitely still very early in this blockchain journey. I mean, the systems are still not working 100% as they should. But still, we're very excited about the future. And I think Ronin Network is a big step on the way to actually fulfilling our end goal.
Yeah. Everything has to go step by step. And in terms of scale, I do have a couple slides that I wanted to run over very quickly. The daily active addresses, I think this was last updated on January 11th, peaked over 1 million in November, and these days we're hovering around 300,000, but that is substantial traffic on this Ronin network. That's daily active addresses, sort of like the DAU, but for Ronin. And then we also have transactions of Ethereum versus Ronin, just to try to put into scale a little bit how many transactions are actually taking place on Ronin already. And I think from our perspective, it feels like we're just getting started in terms of bringing new users into the ecosystem, and still Axie being the only game on Ronin. I think this graph right here is very telling.
Yeah, and actually, just to chime in here, I mean, Axie will of course have other games in its own ecosystem, and the Builders program is a good start of it, showing how we are looking at it. So even if it's still only the basically breeding that's on chain, we have so much off chain usage as well. Basically, whenever people are just playing these matches, right? So on average, each day, I think we are up to, maybe you have the latest numbers there, Jeff, are we up at still 2.6 million daily active players, or is it increased a little bit?
We're right around 2.5 right now. So it's been interesting, right? Like even with the recent volatility in crypto and the Axie economy, yeah, people are playing Axie. Everything is, in terms of the user numbers, everything is quite stable. So.
That's great. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about is this shift from proof of authority to proof of stake, and maybe we could define those terms a little bit. Jeff, could you help us shed some light? It looks like we might have lost Alex, and oh, there he is. He's back. Good. But yeah, because we're proof of authority right now. What does that actually mean for the end user?
So in order, right, like right now, in order to make Ronin easy to use, fast and cheap, there are certain trade-offs that need to be made. And so one of those trade-offs, right, is that, right, rather than having tens of thousands of miners validating all of the data that's being added to the blockchain, we have a permissioned set of validators, right? Sky Mavis and some of our allies. You guys may know that Axie Chat is one of them. We have validators that are actually in charge of adding new data, new blocks to the chain. So that is proof of authority. And basically, what we talk about in the light paper is that this proof of authority chain will be upgraded over time to become something like a proof of stake, where you're staking RON tokens through a validator. Those validators are earning rewards from, right, staking rewards, gas fees, as well as perhaps rewards from the Ronin treasury, and then sharing those rewards with everyone that's staking with that validator. So yeah, that's basically yeah, proof of authority versus proof of stake.
I got you.
I think,
So
yeah.
no, go ahead, Alex.
Also,
Please.
yeah, I just kind of want to chime in a little bit there. When we're looking at the future of Ronin network, right? As we're saying, we're quite permissioned for now. And the reason for that is actually very simple. Axie Infinity has several millions of users who want to use our blockchain. So that means that we have to be a little bit careful with the people that we are letting in for now. Over time, as the Ronin network is scaling more and more, we intend to progressively open it up so that actually more people can deploy their own smart contracts, and also, yeah, more games as well. And that's not only like third parties, but for the Axie Infinity kind of ecosystem as well.
So in terms of defining tokens, right, we talk about AXS as the governance token of the Axie universe. Is it proper to say that RON is the governance token of the Ronin blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, that's a part of what it does. Also, just kind of more on the general terms, when we're looking at why do blockchains actually make sense? Well, it actually is related to the tokens that power them. So every blockchain needs security, and blockchains need to pay for that security. So that's a part of like why they are even decentralized in the first place. So you need a token to reward those who are validating the blocks, and for us, that is the Ronin token itself. So that means that as more and more users are coming into the Ronin network and using it more and more, they will have to pay gas fees in the Ronin token as well. So that's a little bit of how we look at that.
Okay. And I think that makes sense mostly. And now I want to start moving into some general questions that I saw on Twitter, and also just questions that I kind of formed based on things that people were discussing and some confusion points that seem to be occurring. Will RON ever be used as in-game rewards? Because it's not a game token. It's clearly not a game token. But are there ever going to be moments in the Axie ecosystem where maybe there's like a small chance where you get a little RON if you win an arena match instead of it only being SLP? For example, could that ever happen?
I'm not going to rule it out. So, the way that we've always said Axie's function is that they are supposed to be able to earn many, many different tokens. Now, most of those tokens will be tied into the Axie Infinity ecosystem, just like SLP is the first of many tokens, and you can now also earn AXS. But in the future, as we partner with different companies, that could be really massive ones in real life. It makes sense that as they are putting in their own tokens, as they are entering the blockchain space, maybe you will be able to earn those with your Axies as well. So of course, maybe Ronin in the future, but it's not something that we have planned immediately. But I think this is really important as for people to kind of grasp that Axies are basically the ticket to the entire Axie Infinity ecosystem, and that you can farm different type of tokens. Now, how that will look like in the final stages is still up for determination. But yeah, I think that should be a pretty bullish thing for everyone who's holding Axies right now.
I like that. Axies as a ticket to the universe. Jeff, anything that you want to add on to that in terms of reward structures?
Yeah, so what I'll say is, 30% of all RON has been reserved for the community. And so basically, this year, a lot of that is going towards the Katana liquidity pool rewards. But, what we do with the community rewards in the future, past 2022, I think is TBD. And I think one of our guiding principles is our players should be able to earn ownership of our various products by interacting with Axie Infinity, right? That's one of our, it's not actually about earning money. It's actually about earning ownership, earning a place at the table. That is, I think, one of our core guiding principles. So, yeah, I think a tournament, maybe even a leaderboard season sponsored by the Ronin Network, that could be a fun experiment to run in the future and see how it resonates.
Okay, I like that. That's kind of funny to think about Ron as a sponsor of an Axie tournament, but it's actually sort of perfect. The market's right on brand.
Actually, I think I also want to just mention in terms of the Katana rewards and people who have been farming Ronin. I mean, right now it's going to a lot of those people who have significant amount of assets, because these are the things that we need in the Ronin ecosystem right now. So why are we rewarding liquidity providers, for example, with RON tokens? Well, the answer is simple: because we need liquidity for trading. So it makes sense to reward it. So in the future, what do we need? Do we need the players to be able to find Ronin so that they can have a stake in the Ronin network? I mean, I find that quite likely, actually. It's just that it's not something that we have set out to do yet. But yeah, there is a significant amount of a portion of Ronin tokens up for grabs here. So I think we'll have to figure out over time how we can use those most effectively, because that's basically what's important here.
Yeah, and of course, all of this is outlined in the Ron Light paper that's now been published on the web. You can find the link very easily from the Axie Substack. There's just a recent article about the Ron token being released, and that can send you to all the details about all the different allocations and all that stuff. This isn't secret information. It's all out there if you want to dig deeper and kind of do your own research, as they say. Another common question that I've seen is about single token staking, right? We have single staking for AXS with pretty nice rewards. We don't have that with SLP. We don't have that with Ron. Will that ever be a thing, I guess, for either of those tokens? I guess for Ron, it's a little different because we have validators, and that is a form of single token staking, but that's not accessible to just your everyday Katana user. I think that's more what people are curious about.
So yeah, so basically in terms of sided Ron staking, right? The idea is for anyone to be able to stake their Ron through a validator, right? So if you do not have a validator and you want to stake your Ron, what you would do is you would choose from the selection of the menu of validators. Do you want to stake with Sky Mavis? Do you want to stake with Axie Chat? Do you want to stake with DAP Radar, right? And then you stake through them by staking your Ron tokens with that validator. And basically what happens is the staking rewards are issued to the validator and then shared with everyone who's staked with them. So that is the architecture that we're most likely going to go with. It's possible that things change. Why? Because this is an entirely new industry. There are technology breakthroughs that happen on almost a monthly basis. But right now, that looks like the most probabilistic architecture structure that we'll go with regarding the staking system.
Okay. And about becoming a validator, how does someone go about that? Is it open for anyone to apply? Is it sort of for select community members? Will it become more open over time? And also, like, is there a limit on the amount of validators that we can have? Let's say we had hundreds of people that did want to sign up. Is that something that we could accommodate, or is there a point where it becomes too many?
Yeah, I'll take this one because we get so many questions about different people who want to be validators, and actually I wish we could add them, but there are actually some technical limitations here. You know, our most important task is to make sure that this network runs flawlessly, and that means that we need to do this progressively, like over time, adding a few different validators. So what I can say is that we're preparing an announcement with some new validators that are joining us very shortly, now that the Ronin token is live. And over time, we will be expanding the validator pool so that it potentially can reach, in the hundreds. But over time, as we see that, the technology evolves further, it's possible that, Axie, Infinity, and the Ronin network will evolve into becoming like fully permissionless. But that's more of a long-term goal. And the reason why I'm saying it is because it's important for people to understand what we're maximizing for here. Like Axie Infinity has so many users that, implementing very, very bleeding edge technology that might, when we're already doing that, but even more bleeding edge, is quite dangerous because we don't know how these systems actually work when they're being, fully pressured. So in certain cases, for other blockchains, we might see that, they are saying that they're fully scalable, that they can support millions of users, but when that really happens, they break down. And that's really not something that we want to happen with Ronin networks. That's really not why we built it in the first place. So I think that's really important for people to kind of understand.
And maybe to piggyback off that a little bit, I think you've answered it some there, but this is a direct question that I've seen a few people pose. Why did we have to launch RON? Like, why couldn't we have used AXS or SLP in place of RON to handle gas on the network? Like, in theory, if SLP is the gas on the network, wouldn't that be a type of burn mechanism?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, but it wouldn't necessarily make sense in the long term for the Ronin network to use SLP as a kind of gas token. So Ronin network is a separate product. It needs its own token to sustain for like many years. I think that the time frames that we're looking for Ronin network is not in the couple of years, it's more in the decades. Like, we think that this network and Axie Infinity will also be here for many years to come. So that means that each separate product should have its own token, and and that they need their own sustainable systems to work. So for SLP, it's tied to breeding. Will it be more in the future? That's possible, but probably going to be tied to Axie Infinity as a whole. And when I'm saying that, I don't mean that it's going to be the main currency or anything like that, but it's going to be like in Axie Infinity related type of games at least.
Gotcha. Jeff, anything you want to add on to that, or should we just move on here?
So yeah, I mean, it's right. Like, in terms of the Ronin network is going to be the home for the next generation of amazing gaming, NFT gaming experiences, right? So it needs to be distinct, right? Also because of, right, how do we attract the best and the brightest game developers, right? Like, they don't want to only just be, right, like an add-on to the Axie Infinity ecosystem. They want to be distinct and to create their own path, their own destiny. So that's why, right, like the Ronin token also helps just like create some separation between the two communities, while also creating a lot of alignment.
Gotcha.
I think, yeah, last thing I'll say, like on the Ronin token here, there are questions related to like the free transaction and like why isn't Ronin being burned. What I will say is that right now we might have taken a little bit off in terms of providing too many free transactions for Axie owners. It's not going to be like that forever. Like, we are going to be making tweaks to that system so that people will actually have to pay for transactions, of course.
Yeah, it's a phase-in kind of a thing. I think is really the key part there.
I mean, if we like, the thing is, we couldn't set the free transactions to 0 immediately because it wouldn't even be possible for people to get RON. So that's why they had like 20 free rather than 100 free. So
yeah, you need some time to let it circulate, or at the very least, do some transactions on Katana, swap some tokens around so that you can get yourself some RON. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But to be clear, maybe even a more simplistic question: is there RON that's burned after each transaction when it's used? Is it like is it EIP 1559 on Ethereum, where is RON deflationary in that regard? I hope I'm using the right big words here to ask that question.
EIP 1559 has not been implemented on Ronin right now, but it's something that we'll take a look at. Right. The interesting thing is actually, for example, the Ronin network actually owns Katana. Right. Well, this is actually the first time that you have an example of protocol owned DEX. So there are some also unique features to the Ronin network. Right. Imagine if Ethereum owned Uniswap. Right, that would be a new source of value creation for the protocol. So yeah, it's we're not going to necessarily do everything exactly like Ethereum, but yeah, EIP 1559 was definitely a very popular upgrade. It actually happened after we deployed Ronin, so we'll look into it. Right, there's always a trade-off between growth and value accrual and sustainability, right? So far, we've had to grow to survive, to become relevant, for people to learn about this movement. And so a lot of our developer resources have gone towards things that just facilitate growth. Over the coming years, right? And over the coming months, weeks, right? It's also important to sprinkle in and also focus on things that add sustainability and value accrual. So it's a balancing act, right? It's a huge question, right? And there are always trade-offs for everything, and it's not so simple. So
yeah, absolutely. I think trade-offs is the perfect way to frame it. So one of the specific things I wanted to just clarify, because I saw this question again regarding free transactions. Scholars often have the account that they play on, right? That's the one with the Axies. So that account would have free transactions. But then they cash out their SLP to their own Ronin account, which often doesn't have any assets. So if you're a scholar in that situation, you're going to want to get at least 1 or 2 RON or something and load up your account so that you're going to be fine to have plenty of transactions moving forward. Because eventually that account will not have free transactions anymore if it doesn't have any Axies on it. Like if you're just a scholar that hasn't bought an Axie yet, for example. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we have an app for that. It sounds like a sounds like a little bit of a meme, but we have an app for that. It's called Scatter. So if you go to scatter.roninchain.com, or ask your manager to do that, and then send you, he can send. I suggest that all managers send a small amount of RON tokens to all of their scholarship accounts by using Scatter, because that's basically what it's designed for, so that these scholars can actually, that they can transact. And actually, that's also helping the Ronin network. When scholars are transacting on the network, they are giving something back by burning or by spending RON. And I think that's actually something that I really want to touch on also in this dev chat. But it's more related to related to Axie and the sustainability of the system with SLP, and who is adding actually value to the Axie Infinity ecosystem. So yeah, Andrew, where are we exactly? Or is it time, or are we waiting a little bit? Still on Ronin.
No, I think we can move on to a broader conversation about economy. We covered most of the key questions I wanted to get through with Ron specifically. So let's talk about the broader conversation. Obviously, a lot of questions about SLP, the future of what those burn mechanisms look like. And I think there's questions and concerns about how all these tokens tie in with each other and how they're all interconnected, and maybe how they'll be more interconnected in the future.
Yeah, this is quite a big package to start unpacking, I should say. So I think I'll start at the very high level with some principles of how we designed Axie, and what do we actually want to reward. So when we started to create Axie Infinity, and basically the idea of rewarding people with tokens was for their effort and for the value that they contributed to the Axie Infinity ecosystem. Now, when we look back at it, actually, maybe Axies themselves are a little bit too useful, because each Axie has a never-ending, basically, ticket to produce resources without after you've done that first purchase. So that's something that we are looking really deeply into. And especially also when you consider like what kind of value are people adding back into the ecosystem when they're playing basically only adventure mode, for example. Like adventure mode is is an example of something which is actually more of a tutorial at this point, and we rewarded people for interacting with the tutorial and learning the game, learning the basically the mechanics. And now it was never really intended to be a massive part of people's lives, but it turns out that people take something that you make and run with it, and as a team we have to adapt to that. So that's something that we spent a lot of time considering, like what happens if we are really being very aggressive against adventure mode, or if we're taking a kind of a step back and not doing much with it. So expect some changes there in the coming weeks.
Jeff, I'm sure you've got something to add on here.
Yeah, sure. So I think Alex kind of touched on the broad principles pretty well. So right, like I guess I'll just focus on a couple of different things, right? So clearly, right now, SLP, right, the mint to burn ratio is out of whack, right? Only 25% of the SLP that's being emitted each day is being burned, right? So how do we get this to be balanced, right? The interesting thing about SLP, the magic of it, is that as we are growing exponentially, the amount of SLP being minted or created each day grew exponentially. That's actually good in that it allowed us to accommodate new users. The issue is that, right, like as growth slowed, the amount of SLP being minted each day, right, as growth slows, burn also slows relative to how many people are in the user base, right? So when that happens, there needs to be an adjustment of SLP minting where it's back, more balanced with demand, right? So it auto scaled up, but didn't auto descale as demand went down. So right now, there are a lot of people, I think the community understands that a majority of the SLP that's being minted is being done for kind of monotonous, unskilled activities within the ecosystem, right? A lot of it is coming from adventure mode and it's coming from the daily quests. So, right, like as we wait for more burn mechanisms, right, like cosmetics, Axie upgrading, there are actually a lot of different options. As we wait for these additional sources of burn to come, right, we have to look at how do we basically reduce issuance to get it more in line with where demand actually is. Because there is no free lunch. We still have to abide by the laws of economics in the universe where, right now, there's a clear issue where, right, demand, right, around 45 million SLP is being burned per day. But 200 million SLP is being created per day, right? So in the short term, we cannot get the amount of SLP being burned close to 200 million. That's not going to happen in the next days or weeks. So what we have to do to balance the economy is to figure out where can we strategically reduce issuance to get it much closer to 45 million SLP per day. So that's that's basically how it is, right? That might be brutally honest, but that is right. Like that is basically the situation that we need to address right now. We take it really, really seriously. We know that people, right, like that a strong economy, is something that a lot of our community members are depending on. So we know that it's important. But ultimately, at the end of the day, right, like the tokens, right, like they need to be rewarded based on skilled play in our ecosystem. And right, like in order for people to be able to earn by playing the game, there have to be people that are spending for fun. So that's
of course tied also to Axie Origin, as the game is being released with more gameplay, more live operations, more tournaments. Basically ways for people to actually spend money in the game because they actually love it. And we know that there are many people in the game who love Axie just by interacting with it. So what I will say is that some of the changes that we made so far have kind of been leading into this direction, with adventure, like SLP being reduced first, and then we had the 800 MMR rule against bots, and now we're also increasing the breeding cost. We've had multiple ban waves, against multi accounts. We've been sanctioning marketplace bots, and we're also doing changes to MMR resets in the off seasons, and having that SLP and ETH pool that's incentivized for run. So I think on our end we are working hard to ensure that the economy in Axie Infinity remains or stays healthy, hopefully over time. And I think the fact is, like, this is still experimental. Like,
Right.
I think we all have to kind of realize that we are trying our best, and I think we'll see how some of these systems turns out. Of course, we have heavy data backing up some of our whenever we're changing something, and I think that's also important to talk a little bit how our company operates. It's not like I can just go in and say to the team, tomorrow we're gonna triple adventure mode rewards, we're gonna turn everything into only SLP. Like, that's really, and then everyone would do it. And the same goes for anyone in the founding team. Like, we make decisions together based on hard data and also combined with intuition. So these things are like it's a combination of the experience that we've earned over time, I would say, and that's what makes Axie Infinity and the Sky Mavis team special compared to and why we even managed to get this far.
And some things are like I like the sort of live experiment comparison, because some things are hard to predict. And one of those things is we know that Origin will drive a lot of demand for breeding, and that will burn a lot of SLP. And one of the things that Jiho has said in the past is like, well, we do need to stockpile some SLP. When this event happens, if there's not enough SLP, then there's a squeeze on the supply, and then all of a sudden things start to moon and you have this little bubble. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But it's also hard to know, like, how much is enough SLP. How many Axies are we going to have to breed when Origin comes out as the meta evolves? Like, we can model things out, right? But we don't know. We haven't released a game at this scale yet, and those are the kind of things that we have to keep in mind when we're balancing, and always have to remember that change, even small changes, can have really big ripple effects. So really big changes can kind of cause tidal waves in the ecosystem. Sometimes that's necessary, but it really has to be thoughtful and planned out, and not something you want to do too quickly. I think
I think
you can't take it back.
Yeah, exactly. And also mentioning that we are, and frankly speaking, sometimes at the mercy of the broader crypto market as a whole. Mm-hmm. Like, when there are bull cycles, everything goes up. It doesn't really matter if you have a bad product or solid product, or the general feeling is that everything is basically going to the moon. When the market goes into bear, that's really when we'll see which economies are sustainable, what systems do we need to change, and that's some real talk. We have to be cautious of that. And when the economy also goes really into a massive bull market, some of the valuations on certain assets, or for example like SLP, might go really high on the band, and then they might go further down than they were supposed to. I think if you look historically at, for example, assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, like some of them, sometimes in bear markets, they've gone down significantly, only then to recover. Now, I'm not saying that SLP is going back to where it was, because that's hard. I don't really make those type of kind of. I don't say that easily. But what I will say is that the price is fluctuating, and that's just something that we have to be aware of when we're in the space, and that goes for everyone who is operating, no matter if you're player, scholar, manager, even over the Sky Mavis team.
So I like all that on a high level. Short term, though, what are we talking about? Like, what about an SLP buyback? That's another one that gets brought up a lot, and I've heard a lot of different arguments about whether or not that's like cost effective in terms of actually making a difference. I've heard people say that only works if something like a venture got turned down in terms of its rewards, so that there's multiple forces at work. And I've heard some people say that it's just a great signal, that even if it doesn't make a huge dent financially, it could make people feel better emotionally, I guess, let's say. What are the thoughts about the SLP buyback? And I guess there's a wide spectrum there in terms of how much could be bought back and when. So very open-ended in nature.
Sure. So I'll tackle this one. So we actually put out a dev journal on January 4th talking about all the ways to actually help balance the economy. And one of those things, and I think it is very popular, is this idea of using a portion of marketplace fees to buy back some SLP. So it's definitely something that we're considering. It's on the table. It's not a magical band-aid, right? Like golden turnkey solution. There actually is no silver bullet, but like different adjustments, right? For example, scaling down, rewards for non-skilled behavior, right? An SLP buyback. We're adding more burn mechanisms. We did add the Lunar New Year event as a additional source of demand for Axies. Right, all of these things, when combined, can help turn the tide and balance the economy. But none of them in isolation, right, can really act as a magical solution. So, yeah, it's definitely something that's possible.
The real answer is to keep building. Like that's the only silver bullet, that is in existence, no matter what you are doing in this space. Just keep building, and over time, if you are right in your assumptions, things will improve over time. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. So a hard and direct question, but one that I saw copied and pasted over and over. Are we going to make it until Origin? Like a lot of people are asking themselves that hard question right now. I believe in Axie long term, but is the economy going to survive short term until Origin comes out? What can we say to those people to hopefully give them a little more confidence?
Well, we've been here since 2018, right? Like people have been pronouncing that, oh, Axie is going to die. Actually, since I think the first week of Axie Infinity, right? This is just a CryptoKitties clone. It's going to die, right? Like actually our economy crashed and rose from the ashes like a phoenix many times over the last 4 years. Not to say not to put the recent struggles and economic volatility, not to take it lightly, but we've seen this before, and yeah, we're gonna keep building. We're going to launch Origin, right? I think we've given guidance that we plan on rolling it out, through a soft launch over the next couple of months. It's going to happen. And what happens in the short term until we get there, yes, right, it's important, but that is by the definition short term, right? So all we can do as developers is seek to optimize for the people who believe in Axie Infinity, who love this community and are thinking long term. Those are the only people that we can try to satisfy and make happy. If we try to satisfy every single person on this planet, and the people who are acting very emotional and thinking short term, it's going to be impossible, and it's actually going to prevent us from succeeding long term. So the thing that we can optimize for are the long term missionaries. That's why we always talk about that long term thinking, long term missionaries. These are the people that we can optimize for making happy. And I understand that there are some people who rely on Axie Infinity for short-term things, and I feel a lot of empathy for them. But it's just impossible for us to optimize for that and create a sustainable, amazing ecosystem in the long run.
Worth touching on here is actually the concept of universal basic income, right? And that basically everyone gets something that they can live off, from the states each month. Enough so that they can spend their time on whatever they want, and a lot of people were potentially touting Axie as the next universal basic income scheme that could be a potential. And from what we see is that it actually is possible to distribute tokens to a massive amount of players based on playing inside the game, if some of the nation states will want to do that. But when we look at how do we actually make a sustainable ecosystem and how many should actually be able to earn potentially in Axie, I think we have to, first of all, let's check back at traditional gaming. How many people are making a living there? Like I come from the esports space. I love watching esports, and of course you do that, Andrew, too. But how many players in Dota 2 are actually making a living playing that game? I think there must be less than 100. And in Axie, we have all 2.5 million daily active players. And already those who are placing high on the leaderboard, that's probably even more than the entire kind of professional base in Dota 2 already. So what I think is that over time, we'll see a larger portion of players being able to, have an income in Axie, but, it can't be literally everyone. There has to be value that they bring back. They have to, be skilled players potentially. And there also has to be players who just love interacting with the ecosystem and love playing the game for fun. Like they find the entertainment value to be the most important piece of it. Like play and earn. That's what we're aiming for here. And I think that's a really important kind of distinction here.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of a shift as well. And I think for the, it's important to remember that Axie is a universe. Have right now is the Axie Arena. So this card game where the Axies are battling, this is the competitive mode, right? This is for those gamers that love esports and those, kind of zero sum style like MMR leaderboards where it is really competitive and really strategic. We know that that doesn't appeal to every type of gamer out there. There's achievers and collectors and discoverers and people that just want to go out and see their Axies in the wild and just connect with the community and play games that have a very low sense of urgency and just sort of a beautiful landscape, the Breath of the Wild style vibes. So I think sometimes people confuse that and look at the current game we have right now as the Axie universe. And this is just one piece of it. And I think this specific piece we've got right now is kind of designed to cater to the more competitive gamer kind of mindset.
Yeah, and also one thing that I am very much looking forward to is meeting more people in real life. And I'm not talking about like these smaller meetups, but having like places around the world where we can see the community, see the people who actually care about Axie in more than just a very extractive sense. Like who are the true missionaries? Mm-hmm. Who are the guys who believe, and guys and girls, I should say, who believe in the Axie Infinity mission and think that, that potentially a game where you actually own your own assets and that you have the potential to make something, like to be a part of the ownership group by earning tokens is amazing. Like it's a massive innovation in gaming. And these people who see Axie as it's the first of its kind, like that's something not to be taken lightly. Like when I'm looking at the future of Axie, I see something that can rival Pokemon. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not thinking, of course, like I need to be more careful with what I'm saying here. I'm trying to think in the short term too, but my head is very focused on like what happens in the next years of Axie Infinity and how can we make this into something that's actually as big as we want to.
It's an important balance.
Still here, I think it's still really early. Like how many potential gamers are in the world? Like several billions.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, but also in the crypto space. So it's still really early days here. And try to zoom out, even though I know it's hard. And I'm saying that being empathetic to those who have never been involved in a crypto bear market, that's something that I can relate very heavily to. I mean, we're all newbies once, and it's hard to reconcile when the market is suddenly down 50%. Mm-hmm. I don't want to take that lightly either. But the only thing I can say is that nothing comes easy. You have to find that like conviction inside yourself. Like, do I actually believe in this tech? Do I believe in Axie? Do I believe in the team? Is this something that I want to be a part of or not?
The bear market really makes you
real talk here.
Look at your NFTs that way. Did I buy this because I actually really like it, or did I buy it because I thought its value might go up, and now I'm really sad that it didn't? And I'm having some of that reflection with some of my NFTs. Some I very much like. Others I'm having that moment of clarity. But sorry, you were going to say, Jeff.
I think like if we believe that Web3 crypto is going to change the world, if we believe that NFTs are going to change gaming, then there's so much value in learning, right? Like downloading a wallet, learning how to actually use these applications, like really using them, right? Not just like buying some coin on an exchange, on a centralized exchange, but actually, right, downloading a wallet, sending tokens on chain, right, performing all these actions, buying NFTs, trading them, right? You're actually getting a glimpse of the future. You're learning about how the internet will be disrupted way before most of the rest of the world. And there's actually immense value in that. It's like being a user of the internet in 1980. So I think also like there's a reason that actually they're called scholars. When we created the term scholar, it had nothing to do with, right, like the current model, like sharing SLP, what have you, right? It was called a scholar because by playing Axie Infinity, you're learning about the blockchain. Axie is actually a school in many ways where you're learning really important life skills. Of course, these life skills are only going to be important if we believe that blockchain is going to change the world. For us, that is a given. We believe 100% in that future. I also want to say, right, like take the learning, the education that you're getting from this ecosystem really seriously, because especially during bear markets, that is where a lot of the value is going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those guys, I think sometimes it's easy to look at the people in the Axie space or generally in life that people have a lot of assets, and you're like, oh well, why isn't that me? In reality, a lot of the value is being created in bear markets when most people don't understand or don't even have the will or tenacity to stay focused on one thing. And in this life, in this world that we live, there's so much like short-term things that happen. I mean, you can go on TikTok, you get pounded by a million messages all the time. I mean, it's something about thinking long term here. And I know you guys, maybe get a little bit tired of us saying that, but honestly, that's how I feel, and I think that's the general statements from the team.
Yeah, there's lessons to be learned everywhere, and there are a lot of silver linings, I think. And these are the moments where you really get tested. I can definitely say in like the 2019 bear market, I lost faith. I liquidated, and then I came back, and I've regretted it ever since. So I've been through that cycle once. I remember what it felt like, and I remember what it felt like to finally realize that and just let all my assets go, and then to come back later and just accept that, okay, I got it wrong. I actually do believe in this, and I was talking to some of the wrong people, and I needed a better data feed. It really is a process, and if this is your first bear cycle, I really can empathize with you. And I also believe that as much as you do research, it is hard you just kind of have to live through one. There isn't really anything that replaces it. It's like stand-up comedy. You can prepare and write jokes, but nothing replaces actually going up on stage and doing it in front of an audience. So, despite all of the talk about focusing long and being early adopters, it does hurt in the short term. And I don't know what to say about it other than I've been there, and I'm still here with you through this one, and it does hurt. But we're gonna make it. I think that brings me to one of my last questions. It's like in the notes. That's the last thing I had in here. Are we gonna make it, man? Like, are we gonna be okay? I think some people in the community need that virtual hug right now of just like, hey, man, it's okay. We're gonna make it. I don't know. Any follow up to that?
So I mean, the Axie community, one of the reasons that Axie works is people love their Axies, and people love the people that they meet while playing Axie. Like a lot of the reasons that like the crew from 2018, 2019, I think stayed in crypto is because they had this support system of people in the Axie community that they could hang out with, right? Like as a crypto person, it can be very isolating to be involved in this space. A lot of the times, nobody in your personal life is involved in crypto to the extent that you are, right? The Axie community is a place of like-minded individuals where everyone is going through, right, either the same joys, the same struggles and hardships. So yeah, like definitely these times are amazing for making friends, forming relationships, right? Like there are Axie communities popping up around the world. I play basketball with Axie community members near where I live, and go to the gym with them. I think like this is a time for those types of activities. So everyone in the Axie community is going through hard times. I feel like, right, like even right, like we're going through hard times. We can also relate to the community. And I guarantee that every single Axie community member can relate to you in some way on a level that, right, like even your best friends in the physical world cannot. So definitely take comfort in each other, learn about each other, ask each other questions. And I think, yeah, that's where, right, like I think that's what I would be doing right now, if I were you guys, right? Like really, getting to know each other. Like the Axie community is one of the only places in the world where, right, you can get mentorship and friendship from someone, anywhere, anyone, anywhere in the world, right? So really take advantage of that opportunity. Like you can DM, right, like some really awesome, really successful, really knowledgeable people, right? And if you say that you're a member of the Axie community, there's already going to be this common shared bond. So yeah, I'll leave you guys with that.
Yeah. I think for me, what I will say is like more generally speaking is like life, that I think as long as people improve every day and you don't succumb to basically being toxic. I think it's so easy sometimes that you get lost in your own mindset and you're like, oh, you start doubting your your decision. like going back to first principles and trying to be a little bit stoic, actually, and just thinking like, is this out of my control or inside my control? And what can I do to improve? Like, can I actually help the Axie community in any way? The feedback that I'm giving here, is this helpful or not? I think that's really important. And if you actually want to make it, try to think about these things in a like a more stoic way, quite simply. And also kind of iterating on what Jeff said. I mean, actually, it's a lonely journey to be in crypto. And I think in Axie, a lot of people are going to be, trash talking your life choices. Even like, why are you playing like a crypto game called Axie with like digital pets? And like, they are also saying like the entire crypto space is an entire scam, right? Like, actually, we're on the same team here. What are we trying to achieve? Like, we're trying to get people to understand that, owning your digital assets, being able to earn something, potentially like getting something back when you're playing in the game, is important for people in life. And I think that's generally what I would focus on. Like, try to learn more about that. Why is this important? Why did I get attracted in the first place? And if it's only for the money, probably you should dig a little bit deeper and see, if this is the right place for you.
Yeah, the word community often gets overused in these kind of developer talks, and I've seen people meme about it on Twitter. But in these tough times, it does seem like, from what I've observed, the guilds that have put the most effort into building community and interaction with community members and having them engage with each other, these are the guilds that are weathering the storm much more effectively. They're the ones that are seeing less scholars drop out, and they're the ones that are seeing scholars that are excited to connect with one another and have this shared passion for the game and really start to embrace this play and earn mentality. And I think for myself, even speaking anecdotally, the days where I feel the anxiety or it's sort of getting the best of me, or I'm stuck on that I'm down 10% loop, I realize it's because I haven't talked to another person in a while, and I need to just pick up the phone and call a friend or talk to Stu or talk to Jeff and just, hear from another person. And sometimes just hearing that someone else is also having a similar struggle is enough to bring you back and realize, oh yeah, everybody's also dealing with this. I'm actually this is par for the course. I'm middle of the bell curve. Everybody's feeling a little bit of that panic right now. For me, I need to feel some of that common ground. And I get that the most from community, my personal community, others that I'm a part of, and members of the Axie community. So I just used the meme word like 10 times in 2 minutes, but there it is, guys. Keep building. And on the personal level, just try to connect with each other. I think that's really what it's all about. All right. Well, any other final thoughts here? Because we do have one final surprise to end this, per usual. Anything else we need to add to wrap up this dev chat, guys? This was a real pleasure, per usual.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, I think great. Like, let's stay focused. I also want to say that when times are hard, people get a little bit cranky, upset, and you feel like you want to fight people online, right? Like, you might want to fight against other communities, you might want to fight your favorite Axie influencer, whatever. You might want to go on my Twitter and say really mean things, right? But we need to, as a community, really band together, and we can't try to find enemies within our ecosystem. And that also goes for other games. We have huge enemies. There are, right, like the traditional gaming industry, right? They are really against the NFTs right now. The media, right? They don't really understand what's going on here. There are huge players like Facebook, right? Trying to come in and own and buy the metaverse. We have much, much larger enemies. We can't fight with each other. So I want to see us really focus, mentally prepare ourselves for, the next couple of months. Is going to be really important. It's going to be really important that Origin goes well, that you're all being amazing ambassadors for this community. As an Axie community member, anything that you do reflects on the rest of us. So when you do horrible things or say toxic things, you're actually bringing the entire ecosystem down, and you're actually hurting yourself, right? If you're complaining in a toxic way, then you're actually making the situation worse rather than being part of the solution.
Yeah, and sometimes when I read some comments, it makes me like think, is this guy actually an Axie player, or is there some enemy who's trying to like make other people think that, you know, the sky is falling here? I think that's also worth considering. Like, we operate in the crypto space. I said this the last time too, but there are actually like outside influences who would benefit from Axie failing. So that's something that's like worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely some bot accounts out there. That's fair to say. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Some really great insight and very exciting times ahead, per usual. To wrap up this dev chat, though, we're going to leave you with one final slide.